Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today we've got a case that really reminds me of those Russian nesting dolls?
Oh, yeah.
Just when you think you've got all the layers figured out, is another one hiding underneath. So we're digging into the latest legal moves by Calvin Brutus and Adonica Alder. And I think some of our listeners might remember their names from some previous cases we've covered. But our main source today is a news article from Newsroom Guyana. It was published just yesterday, November 10th, 2024. And the title is pretty straightforward. It's called AG to Pursue Legal Costs Owed by Brutus and Wife After Court Judgment.
Yeah, and the timing of this is really interesting because this news comes right after Brutus and Alder withdrew a high court action that they had filed back in August.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm following this right. This was their attempt to unfreeze their bank accounts.
Exactly. That's the second time they've tried to get those accounts unfrozen.
Hold on. So their accounts are frozen. And this is like the second attempt to get them unfrozen.
Yeah.
Why were they frozen in the first place?
So that part isn't totally clear from this specific article, but it does stem from an earlier court order. I guess we'd have to do a little more digging to get the full backstory there.
Okay, well, let's put a pin in that for now.
Yeah.
But you said this is their second attempt to unfreeze the accounts. What happened the first time?
Well, they actually filed an application to leave the jurisdiction. They said it was for Alder to get medical attention.
Interesting. But the court dismissed that application too.
Right. Yeah, and that dismissal came with a pretty hefty price tag. The court ordered them to pay costs $250,000 each to the Attorney General, the Commissioner of Police, and Special Organized Crime Unit.
Whoa. Okay, so $250,000 three times over. That's a total of $750,000.
Yeah, and the deadline to pay has already passed.
And the Attorney General's office is saying they're going to go after them for it.
They're definitely serious about recovering those costs. The article even mentioned the possibility of further legal action if Brutus and Alder don't pay up.
Okay, so we've got two withdrawals. One to unfreeze assets and one to leave the country. Plus a big bill they haven't paid. If I'm on the other side of this case, I'm starting to see a pattern.
Right. It really makes you wonder what their strategy is here. I mean, why withdraw these cases instead of just fighting them in court?
Yeah, is this some kind of legal tactic? Or are they just running out of options?
Well, withdrawing a case before the judge makes a ruling could be a way to avoid setting a legal precedent, especially if they think they're going to lose.
That's a good point. It's like hitting the reset button before things get too messy.
Exactly. And then they can regroup and try a different approach later.
But that still leaves them with this massive $750,000 debt. And the Attorney General is breathing down their necks.
Yeah. Ignoring a court order to pay costs can be seen as contempt of court, which could lead to even more penalties down the line.
Yikes. It sounds like this is just a tip of the iceberg.
Oh, definitely. This situation is far from over, and the stakes are only getting higher.
I'm already hooked. We need to unpack all of this. So let's dive into what this means for Brutus and Alder moving forward.
And this whole thing, it really makes you think about their overall strategy. Like, if they're already facing these financial hurdles, how are they even going to afford to mount a solid defense in their other legal matters?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a really good point. Legal battles, they're not cheap. Especially if you're talking about multiple cases.
Exactly. And this brings up kind of a crucial question. What happens to Brutus and Alder if these legal and financial issues keep piling up? Are they going to be able to keep going after these actions?
And we have to remember, the article mentioned Brutus is a deputy commissioner of police.
Right. That adds a whole other layer to this.
It does. This isn't just some random person. This is a high-ranking police official.
And he's caught up in all these legal challenges, which is definitely going to raise some eyebrows, People are going to start asking about conflicts of interest and things like that.
It really makes you wonder how all of this is going to affect his career, his public image. It's not every day you see a top cop facing this level of legal scrutiny.
Definitely a situation that needs to be watched closely. What happens with these legal proceedings could have big consequences, not just for Brutus and Alder, but for the entire police force, too.
Okay, so based on what we've seen so far, what do you think are the most likely next steps in this whole saga?
Well, the Attorney General seems pretty determined to get those legal costs paid back.
Yeah, they did say that.
So that could mean more legal action, maybe even asset seizure, if it comes to that.
Oh, that's serious stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds like this story is far from over. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled for any new developments.
Absolutely. And as we keep following this case, it's really important to remember that we're only getting one side of the story right now. We have to consider all the different angles before we jump to any conclusions.
Yeah, you're right. We can't make any judgments yet. But one thing's for sure, this whole thing is full of twists and turns, and it brings up some really important questions about accountability, legal strategy, and the consequences of getting tangled up in all these legal battles. But there's something else that's been bugging me.
What's that?
We've talked about the impact on Brutus's career. But what about the personal toll? This has got to be incredibly stressful for both him and Alder.
Absolutely. We tend to focus on the legal stuff, the professional side of things. But it's easy to forget about the human impact, all the stress, the uncertainty, the potential damage to their personal lives. I mean, that's got to be weighing on them.
No, yeah, for sure. It makes you think. And this whole case with all its twists and turns, it kind of raises some bigger questions about the legal system itself.
Yeah.
What does it say about access to justice when even someone in a powerful position, can just file legal actions, withdraw them, and maybe not face serious consequences for not paying the costs?
Yeah, that's a good point. This case could be like a small example of bigger problems within the legal system. It shows how complicated it can be, all the different strategies, and sometimes it shows how unfair things can be.
And for our listeners out there, I think this case gives us a chance to think about those bigger implications. What does it mean for accountability when people in power seem to be using the legal system in a way that maybe not everyone else can? What does it say about who really has the power within the system?
Those are some really interesting questions to think about. And as this case keeps going, it'll be fascinating to see how these themes play out. Will there be more legal action? Will they actually get that money back? Yeah. And what's going to happen to Brutus and Alder, both in their careers and in their personal lives?
We started this deep dive by looking at a news article about one specific legal development. But as we dug deeper, we found all these other actions, potential motivations and consequences that go way beyond this one case.
That's what's so great about a deep dive, right? You peel back the layers, explore all the details, and you start to connect the dots to really understand what's going on and why it matters.
Exactly. And we'll definitely keep following this case as it develops, but we encourage you to do the same too. Keep those thought-provoking questions in mind and see what insights you can find as this legal drama unfolds. This case, with all its details and wider implications, reminds us that even in the world of law, where things might seem black and white, there are always shades of gray that we need to pay attention to and think critically about. Until next time, keep diving deep.
At the Deeds and Commercial Registry, where allegations were being made on a regular basis. That is because of the systems we have put in place. Legislatively, we have passed dozens of pieces of legislation. Historically, for example, the Public Procurement Act, and recently to address the issue of corruption in the public sector. So it is an